Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the show for living beneficiaries, the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. Prepare for the most educational 60 minutes on all of radio with your host, Rick Hidalgo. The House of Hidalgo show can be followed on Twitter or Facebook by searching House of Hidalgo. Find the show on the web at www.therockofsalem.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and while you're there, take the 5-question survey to let us know what you think. The Estate Radio Network is part of the Blog Talk Radio family of networks and can be found at www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Join the show now by chat or call 619-639-4605. Don't forget to dial 1 to get in the queue. Here's your host, Rick Hidalgo! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick Hidalgo, of course, the host of the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. I appreciate you all coming on today. I want to remind you real quick that there is a chat room down at the bottom of the page, blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Go down to the bottom of the page and you'll see a chat room. You can engage in there and you can ask your questions. Or you can call in at 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. Today is kind of a new direction for the House of Hidalgo show, but it's a direction that I'm really excited about going. My special guest is none other than James Swagger, who is a researcher, author. I kind of got to know a little bit about James through my good friend Stephen Roberts over at Cancel the Cabal. Been on a couple shows where we've talked about some different random issues, like that trial that took place a week or two ago, that George Zimmerman case, where we bantered back and forth about different elements in the case. But today we're going to kind of go to his baby, what he likes to talk about, what he likes to research, and that's ancient history. James, are you with me?
Hi, Rick. Thank you for inviting me to the show, and greetings to all the listeners.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, James, where are you right now?
I'm in the very north of Ireland, top centre. You can't get any further north where I am.
Okay, all right. So we're connecting here from South Dakota to Northern Ireland, and this technology just is amazing.
It's amazing how people meet, Rick, isn't it? And thank you kindly for saying that in the show. We have spoke a few times, and it's great to connect, Rick, and it's great to bring me on the show and talk about my stuff. And yeah, I mean, like I say, I didn't know you had a show. We were just on the same network and talking with a mutual friend and about other issues, and so it's nice to be invited to the show, Rick.
Yeah, not a problem, man. I'm excited because you have information that I'm really hungry for. I just watched a documentary about some new discoveries that happened in Egypt that kind of will date Egypt back a little further than what some of the theories were in Egyptology. Of course, I grew up as a very staunch, dogmatic Christian. I wasn't willing to open my mind or my eyes to anything else that was outside of that particular spectrum. And as I've grown up, James, I've started to see that there's things that aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily that they don't fit in to the structure. It's just that you got to look at it with different eyes.
Sure.
And I so I'm really anxious to hear the things that you got to say today. I know you've done a lot of research on ancient history, especially the monoliths. Go ahead, man. I'm going to give you the floor. Tell us a little bit about your history. How'd you get started?
Sure. I should just say I was encouraged academically to be a dogmatic scientist, as well. But my dad is also a hypnotist. He's a mechanical engineer as well. He's left-handed. plays musical instruments by ear, and very much intuitively knowledge-based. I mean, so I've always been encouraged to have an alternative mindset, an alternative knowledge base. Although, I mean, most of my career is academically science and engineering. I mean, I have 2 degrees and 2 masters, and a diploma, which I don't normally mention, but I disregard that, like, but electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and physics with astronomy, mostly, like, and my master's in mechanical engineering and my master's in research, science and society. And, you know, academically, I don't care about that. That's something I did for jobs, something I did for career, you know. And but, like, I mean, all through this, I mean, I've always been encouraged to have an alternative mindset. My dad would have put books down on the table like The Unexplained and all sorts of stuff, you know. And I always had a passion for ancient history, and so I always fueled this little kind of alternative concept, you know, and that grew side by side with the academia. And, you know, I never thought I would be in this field of research one day. I never thought I had to make a decision. I would research one and I'd research the other, and I wouldn't have to decide between the two. They would just run along side by side. And, you know, and that was a strange thing. I mean, it wasn't until my late 20s, and you know, something had happened. But basically, I should say my career. I worked as an energy systems analyst, in the energy industry, and I would have spilled into the water industry too. But mostly, I would have took high tech computer systems that ran electrical engineering complexes, like, you know, massive, like, I mean, multi-million-pound operations, like, and this stuff was all automated, and water treatments, wind farms, oil rigs, like, you know, petrochem plants, like anything really heavy industrial, like, you know. And when this stuff broke or the system needed retuning, or, you know, I'd look at the programming and how it incorporated or transpired into an electrical or mechanical environment and make changes or alter the system to make it better. Like, so that was the systems analyst career that I developed. And, you know, I chased complexity my entire life, Rick. You know, this is what I did as a career. I'm an engineer first and a scientist second. I should say that, you know, because, like, I got issues with some science, like, and science doesn't know all the answers. Like, and I ended up not liking the dogmatic scientific doctrine that I was trying to be indoctrinated into. And it's just like another church. And that's why I was saying that to you, Rick. You know, it's like another dogmatic church, the Church of Darwin, the Church of Scientists, the Church of Physics, like, you know, they're all the same, you know. And so I should say, like, you know, on a history side, you know, I grew up, like, loving and adoring the ancient Egyptian civilization, the Babylonians, the Akkadians, the Sumerians, Mayans, Aztecs, you know, anything ancient that had mysteries about them, you know. And I never really understood them. They were always just areas of reading. And it came to me in my late 20s then, these two things started to coincide, and my friend and colleague had a historical mysteries magazine, and asked me to write some articles, or at least explore the articles that he wanted to write as a scientific advisor or engineering advisor, because he knew I'd done the both. And my historical mysteries magazine doesn't run anymore, and I had researched everything, like the ancient artifacts, like from ancient crystal lenses in Egypt and Babylonia, you know, the Baghdad battery, which is an ancient 2000 BC battery, Antikythera mechanism, this planetarium computer made out of gear wheels that was found of a sunken ship in the island of Antikythera. You know, so anything that was an engineered or scientific artifact. The Nebra Sky Disk is another one, showing constellations dating, like, probably 1600 BC, this artifact, showing constellations and knowledge of, like, solstices and alignments. And so anything like that, you know, is what I kind of got dragged into all these historical mysteries. And I thought then, I've always kind of wanted to be a writer, like, you know, and I thought I would write all these things into different chapters and categorize them somehow, and write a historical mysteries book from the articles that I compiled, you know. And I thought I wanted to write something. I didn't know what I wanted to write, and I went, right, I'll do a little encyclopedia of mysteries. And I love history. I mean, I just regurgitate facts about stuff, like, and I go through a lot of facts, Rick, you know, before I find the good stuff, like, you know, the mystery stuff, you know. I mean, I go through a lot of dates and dives, and I can regurgitate them too, but, like, people talk to me, I just talk about history all the time, and it appeals to me, you know. It's the thing I'm passionate about. The engineering I'm good at, the science I like to do for the complexity, like, you know, and I've all different reasons for doing things, but the passion, though, is the history and ancient history. I like the stuff before the Romans, from the Romans and beyond. Anything after the Romans I'm not interested in. There's too much trouble with it. It's too much warmongery, you know. It's like there is warmongery in ancient times too, but like but the thing I should say then is like there's a lot of mystery around the megaliths and so Stonehenge is the most famous megalithic monument, but we have burial chambers that have strange astronomical alignments, and I ended up writing a book about this called The Newgrange Serious Mystery, and how that happened was I was doing a historical mysteries book, and I thought I would write a chapter on the megaliths just to cover all bases, and I didn't know much about it. I mean, I have been to like an astronomical amount of sites. I shouldn't use that for the pardon the pun, but a large quantity of megalithic sites across Britain and Ireland. I mean, just because they're in my own back door, and I was always taught in school that nothing to see here, don't investigate, can't figure it out. Just a bunch of stones. They're just a bunch of stones that are extremely heavy, extremely large, transported large distances, like interlocking and fitted together in astronomical ground plans and like sophisticated astronomy. So there is plenty to see there, you know, and we have new tools out there to investigate these, and I'll get into that in a minute, but you know, so there's a lot of mystery about these places, and Stonehenge, Newgrange, Callanish Stone Temple in Outer Hebrides, Avebury Stone Circle, Beltany Stone Circle up near where I am, you know, and these dolmens again, probably people are a lot familiar with the dolmens, and there's some strange stuff in America too, in North America, and that's come to light in the not too recent past as well. So, you know, so the megaliths is, I thought I would write a chapter, and when I got to, I mean, the other stuff was nothing to me, like these ancient artifacts, they were just like, I was categorizing this, and the book was actually called Hidden History Secret Science, and it's still on the shelf because I discovered stuff about the megaliths, and I went on this tangent, and I will get back to that book, the Historical Mysteries book, but I mean, I had to put it on the shelf because I came to write about this place in the north of Ireland called Ardmore. It's in the county of Donegal, and the rock art, I went to look at it, and bizarrely, I mean, I should say, like, you know, it was a whole coincidence, call it serendipity, or, I mean, I got a book from America, Rick, and it was called Hamlet's Mill by Giorgio Di Santiano and Hirsch von Deckend, and it's like the archaeoastronomy Bible, if you want to call it that. You know, if you're going to get into archaeology and astronomy, it all roads head to here. This beautiful subject of archaeoastronomy, where you apply astronomy to archaeological monuments and sites, and in an archaeological context, if you want to call it that. And there's a guy who wrote he was a professor of astronomy and philosophy and stuff, and, you know, he wrote this wonderful book, and it's like going into all the mythologies of ancient cultures and how they talk about the mill of the sky, this turning mill, and how they all have knowledge of stars and cosmology and precession of the equinox, and it's incorporated into mythology, and you know, so it's a starting point. But I couldn't get any other copy of it other than a first edition. It cost me about $100, like, and I have a few rare books there, and I went, okay, I'll get a copy, like, and they come from America. And the most bizarre thing was when it came, a piece of paper fell out of it, like it was a photographed article, and I mean, and the article was talking about megalithic observatories like Stonehenge and other stores, and in the article, and I think I had the stone circles and the Orkneys and stuff, and where Scottish Islands they are, and the Ring of Brouwer and stuff like that. And so and it was in the year and the month I was born, July 76, and I went, wow, like, you know, and which I thought was strange. And then I started reading the article, and it's bizarre that this cave book came from America. I ordered it from here, it came from America, and then inside the article was this place called Ardmore, which is a stone's throw from me, pardon the pun. You know, it's just around the corner, and it's showing me this bit of art that I've never heard mentioned. It's not in any books, couldn't find anything on it, you know, and I went, oh, right, better go have a look at this, like, this is within 4 miles of me. And I went, oh, right. So off I go down and have a look at it, and I'm looking at constellations on it. Now, I've been to many sites, Rick, and I've worked in the energy industry and been on wind farms and stuff, and in remote areas, and I've always checked out a megalithic site if it was nearby. And I mean, I've worked and travelled in every county in Ireland, north, south, east and west, 2 or 3 times over. I've been to nearly every city in the UK, every major city at the very least, and I've been to a lot of the islands in the northwest and the northeast of Scotland, south in the Channel Islands, and south of Britain, and the Isle of Man as well. Like, so most of the islands off the coast of Britain as well. So I'm extremely well travelled, and this is all megalithic terrain that I went to. Like, and these megalithic sites are worth a look. They're ancient. They're 2000 BC. Yeah, you mightn't understand what you're looking at. You might just go to goof off them, if you know what I mean. And that's what I talk about. There was times when I went to the megalithic sites just to goof off and have a little look and, you know, kind of whet the appetite, like, but like not in an academic sense. And so, you know, I had a knowledge base there, and I realised that I was looking at constellations. I went back home then, and like I say, this bit of serendipity, this thing just fell out of the book, like, and I ended up, this is the whole reason I wrote a book, was because of this one piece of rock art. I couldn't find anything on the internet about what I was looking at. I found one reference, and it was erroneous. It was clearly erroneous, and it was mapping the constellations out to be something else. And here's the thing, I don't think it needs deciphering. Once you look at it, you see it as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. These two very famous constellations. Would call them the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, the Great Bear, the Little Bear, the Big Saucepan, the Little Saucepan. There's many names for these, and it's what ships use to navigate in the Northern Hemisphere, Rick. I mean, the plough, some call it the Big Plough and the Little Plough. And the Big Plough is something you can use to find the North Star. The back two stars are head and point towards the North Star, and you can't. The North Star is pretty faint, but it's actually at the North Pole, so it's like it's a good way to navigate and find your way with constellations. So it's an extremely important constellation, and you know, people should recognise it when they see it. And it turns out that these two pieces of art not only are on the stone, but they flip in the horizon in 3200 BC when this stone was erected. And I mean, the stone is about my height. It's about 6'3" above ground, at least, maybe 6'6" above ground, and it has to be at least that in the ground. So it's about 13 feet long, and about, say, 5 foot in 5 foot square. So it's quite a large piece of stone, like, you know. Yeah, and it's got a notch in the top of it as well. And the thing is, there's a center line and a notch in this stone, and basically, these two images would have flipped in the sky every spring and autumn equinox. And basically what the art tells you on the stone is, look here and you'll see Ursa Major, look here and you'll see Ursa Minor, every 21st of March, every 21st of September. It's an extremely sophisticated, accurate depiction of the revolving heavens on two very special days of the year. Now, I had to bring this to the world's attention, like, and I'm like, okay, it's not that revelatory, Rick, you know, it's like, you don't write a whole book in this. It's a bit in a chapter, like, you know, but still, it's new and it's current and it hasn't been documented before. And I went, oh my God, what else hasn't been documented? If I can come and find that there now, Rick. Now, I do come from an engineering and a science background. I do have astronomy. I do recognise constellations, but they should be immediately recognisable. But there again, it is off the beaten track. Very few people get there. It's not tourists. It's not. There's no brown tourist signs. We have brown tourist signs to get there. It's not signposted, it's in a field. I struggle to find it myself, like, you know. And the ones that get there, are they astronomy based? Are they engineers? Are they just like going to have a little look at it and go? Mostly, the locals aren't interested in this stuff here. It's usually people from outside. So I kind of went from there, Rick, and I went, right, let's start looking at this thing on a bigger scale of things, you know. And that's what kickstarted me. So I went from wanting to write a book to understanding there was a bit more research involved. And by the time I finished, I understood that this whole megalithic Irish scene wasn't being documented properly. There was stuff there that was, everybody's having a little pot shot at this monument and a little pot shot at that one, but nobody took it in as a whole. And this is where I'm going to tie it together for you, Rick. I took my systems analyst approach that I do with everything. I see psychology as a system. I see taxation as a system and governments as a system. I see ancient history as a system, cultures and civilizations as systems. It just gives me the data on anything, and I'll take it all in, and I'll tell you what I think. I'll spit it back out, and I'll say A, B, and C is equal to D. That's what I think. You know, that's what a systems analyst does. It sees where the system's failing or where it could be better, what went wrong. You know, it's a systems analyst approach. And I just applied my engineering scientific mind in this manner to these ancient cultures, and in particular the megaliths. And what I did was take in the whole of these monuments. Now, the reason I did, Rick, was because Ireland possesses a very high quantity of rock art to go alongside these monuments. So there's a lot of stuff to tell you what these guys were doing. Now, I should say, like, when we're going to talk about Newgrange and Noth in a minute, these passage tombs are they're called they're like astronomical observatories, and this is what I wrote my book about. Now, these two places have 45% of the rock art of Europe sitting in one location in Ireland. That's how much rock art is on these monuments. Like, it's just nearly every curbstone. It's like, Newgrange has 96 curbstones. Nearly everyone is decorated. Noth has 127 curbstones, and everyone is decorated. You know, inside the monument's decorated. It's just riddled with rock art that is astronomy based. So if you're going to go and look at the megalithic civilization, Ireland's a very good place. And even this one region where Newgrange is a very good place. But I realised, as a systems analyst, you can't just go to Newgrange and expect to crack the civilization, the megalithic civilization. Nor can you just go to Stonehenge in Britain and crack the civilization that built this. Like, you know, you have to look at everything they did. You have to look at the stone circles. You have to look at the megalithic chambers that they built, where they buried their dead, these tombs. You have to look at their rock art. You have to look at the standing stones, the standing rows. Look at everything they did. What were they trying to do? Look at it as a whole and see, can you make any opinions or formulate any ideas of what these were about? That was the whole idea of what I was trying to do, Rick, you know. And
right.
By the time I was finished with this, I had a book in my hand, if not two, and I was like, not only was there astronomy at play, astronomy was the reason I got suckered into this whole, you know, I was just enveloped by the whole thing, Rick, you know, and I ended up realising there was a whole region of, like, these guys weren't just astronomers, they were acousticians. They had sophisticated acoustics design elements inside their chambers. And it looks like they were exploring consciousness too, Rick, in terms of, like, either psychedelics and acoustics, if not both. And they left us other types of art that wasn't astronomy based. It's called entoptic phenomena, and it basically is what you see when you go into an altered state. And some of the French cave paintings show evidence of entoptic phenomena, and you know what they call shamanic rock art that's linked with like shamanic art and shamanic trials that they're exploring their consciousness. So there's like a threefold areas of research to this, and you know it's just consumed me since I got into it. So that's why the Hidden History Secret Science book is on the shelf, and the historical mysteries. I will get back to it, like, you know, and I kind of, that's like an outlay how I got into the megaliths, I suppose, Rick, and why that's kind of dominated my early career in systems research as an author. Like, and I always wanted to be an author. I never thought, I always thought then, like, I'll write a book and then I won't know what to do next, and that's your ego telling you don't need to try anything, don't worry about it, it's just an idea, keep your idea there and dream on, like, you know. But and it's actually quite the opposite, Rick. I mean, I've so much stuff that I'm good at researching, I'm good at doing, like, you know, and I'm passionate about it. And you know, and as I was saying to you earlier, I don't want to go back to the energy industry. Like, you know, if I can make this career work, I will, but I want to do it right, and I want to document it right, and I want to bring something new to the table, and I'm doing that. And I have stuff in my book that's new and current and not properly researched or documented. And, you know, I'm in the middle of a sequel now, the Megalith Acoustics Mystery, and I'm doing what's been missing. I've done extra areas of research on the acoustics of these monuments too. And I mean, Stonehenge is very sophisticated acoustics. It's like an ancient auditorium. It's known for its summer solstice and astronomy. So, you know, there's a whole minefield of research out there, Rick, and I kind of, that's where I want to go now. I want to wrap up this. I mean, the Newgrange Serious Mystery really talks about this first book and you'll find it on jamesswagger.com and all my links there. But this Newgrange Serious Mystery is basically an overall look at the passageways of Ireland and how it fits into the Western civilization of Europe, these megaliths as a whole. And I'm looking at it through the window of the rock art and the astronomy and trying to compile something together to show, look, they did this in this place, they did this in this place. It's all different, but they're using the same theories, they're using the same ideas of exploration. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys were like a scientist, they were like super scientists, doing it against the odds. It's like they had their back against the wall, they were up against it, like, you know, they just only used stone, earth, and, like, you know, their intellect, their intuitive knowledge, like, you know, to figure out stuff that we need technology to do. Their technology was their mind, you know, the observational cosmology. And it's bizarre, you know, if you follow the lines of evidence, you can show what they did, you can show how clever they were. Yes, they had to do it at extreme odds and extreme effort and extreme logistics, like, you know, but they did it, and they peered into a window of time. They peered into cosmology, like, you know, and proved some stuff.
Well, you know, James, what's interesting to me is as you're talking and as I relate what you're saying to what I just watched yesterday,
Sure.
3-hour documentary. I mean, it was a long one too. Um, I wonder, are we just looking through the wrong glasses, James? Are we are we
Yes.
are we trying to see this through a certain perception that's been built for us? Because
Yes, exactly. Like, totally how I feel about it.
yeah,
And I mean, we talk about the cultural lensing of our origins, like, because we're given this cultural concept how to look at the past, and basically what we should do is look at the past and look at the data first, and then formulate opinions. But we're already given opinions and trying to prove it true or false,
right.
which is wrong. And is there conspiratorial reason for that? That's a whole other kettle of fish. Like, I think, that's a whole strange kettle of fish in itself. But like, I mean, it's a whole other entity. The whys and wherefores. But yes, we do. We don't have like systems analysts looking at stuff. We now have like a minefield of research going on, especially in the last 20 years, Rick. I mean, alternative knowledge and alternative researchers really are the ones making the breakthroughs. And you now have geologists looking at ancient monuments. You have engineers looking at ancient monuments. You have scientists looking at ancient monuments. And it's not just the archaeologists and the Egyptologists anymore looking at these ancient sites, Rick. There's other people with good skill sets, different skill sets, necessary skill sets, looking at all this stuff. And here's the thing, I always say, I can't understand, 95%, here's the point, right? 90 to 95% of ancient monuments pre-1500 BC, before 1500 BC, has astronomical alignments. And especially in Ireland, all these passage tombs are astronomically aligned. They actually are astronomical observatories first and foremost. Then they are also acoustic chambers inside that they were maybe using acoustics to affect their consciousness and explore and pass out and go into another dream state or something like. But they never hired astronomers to look at these things. I think it's mad. It's like finding a telescope in 10, 20 years, or 10,000 years in the future. They find one of our telescopes and not hire an astronomer to look at what it was. It's like, it's insane. These archaeologists have had. I'm not trying to be facetious and speak it down to archaeologists. Archaeology is a necessary component of all this. And there's great archaeologists out there doing great work, and I pay homage to Michael J. O'Kelly, who, researched Newgrange and did it from the university, like in an academic sense. But, it's not the be-all and end-all. We have a new science called archaeoastronomy. And basically, you can get astronomers in. You don't even need to be sophisticated in astronomy. Anybody can do this. Get an astronomy program on the computer. And you can just type in 3000 BC. You can type in 3000 AD if you want. You can look at the stars in 1,000 years from now. You wind back the stars because of this shifting precession of the equinox. And you then look at the GPS coordinates of the site and you feed that in. You go, or you press in the city of Belfast or London or Colorado or wherever. You type in where you're at. You can look at the stars in whatever time period you want. And then you take a compass and you measure the alignments of these chambers. What are they aligned to? Yeah? Okay, that's easy. That's all easy to do stuff, like. That's what archaeoastronomy is. And you can be an armchair researcher now, if you want to call it that, And what I try to show in the book is that I wanted to build what I call a passage grave cosmology. These things are called passage graves, by the way.
Yeah, tell us about that, James.
Okay, so the book's Newgrange Serious Mystery, and Newgrange is a passage grave. But it's not the only one. There's about 100 of these in Ireland. 75 are probably worth going to. 25 don't even bother. They're decimated. There's very little to see there. But I went to see them too. And out of the 75, they're all in various states of decay, from very little left, just a chamber and alignment, to roofs. One with almost the roofs missing, one with the roofs compact, one with the roofs restored. Some with art fading, all in various states of decay, open to the elements. The rain is battering and wearing these things down, literally. So these passage graves are basically burial chambers, but they're also observatories, and they're also like sound chambers. So if you want to just picture an earth mound with a curbstone of heavy, couple of ton curbs mostly, these curbstones are round in a circle surrounding the mound, and there's a doorway and a passageway entering into the mound, into a central chamber that opens up. Sometimes inside the central chamber you'll have recesses left to right and to the back, which they call a cruciform type chamber. Sometimes they have 5 recesses, sometimes 7, sometimes sophisticated, sometimes very elaborate, and sometimes massive structures. Like some are small, some are baby ones, some are massive ones. Like there's variations in style and design, and these things are all across Ireland, Britain, down as far as southern Portugal, Spain, France, Brittany, Holland, southern Sweden, Denmark. You know, they're riddled across Western Europe.
And James, if I could just interrupt here for a second, my classical Christian upbringing would tell me that that those things were planted there by pagans, people who were,
Sure.
Enemies of the faith, right? I mean, we were.
Well, here's the thing, and here's the Christian thing.
Yeah.
I was just, you believe, I had a girl from Colorado, a really nice girl, and I was bringing her on a personal book tour, and I have the keys to some of these monuments, and I gave her a 1-to-1 tour, and she was totally blown away. And I think she'd come from a Christian background, but not anymore. And she was it's literally similar thing to what you're saying, is that we're given this thing that pagans are the baddies and the Christians are the goodies. And
right.
But the thing is, all these ancient sites in Ireland have churches, and beside them, sometimes they actually had churches on top of the passage graves. I mean, if you look up Lahaig B, and if you put in Jersey passage grave, you'll as in the island of Jersey and the Channel Islands, you'll see a church, a 14th century church on top of the passage grave. And they did it all across France. They put a Celtic cross right beside them. And what they did is even some of the stone circles, they built churches into them and left their pagan monuments inside the church sometimes. There's standing stones inside. Massive. One of the biggest standing stones in the UK is inside a church graveyard in England. And what they did was they tried to stamp out paganism, and to stamp out paganism, they need to incorporate some of their pagan beliefs into the church. And that's what the church did. I'm talking about Catholicism here now.
Sure.
In one particular type of Christendom. But I mean, and they talk about St. Patrick.
I think I may have just lost James. Let me see if I can get him back here. All right, we're gonna try to get him back. Bear with me for just a moment here, as I try to get James back. We were just getting into what was going to be a very interesting part here. It says, hold on, we're trying to get him back. Boy, sometimes this Skype thing is just ridiculous. I don't know that I like that I like Skype. All right, well, all right, let me try to call him back now. And people, Jay. All right, here we go. Now it's dialing. See if I can get James back in. Alrighty. That did not work. I'll edit this part out of the show and No one will ever know it was here. So if you're listening, bear with me. I'm going to throw a couple commercials in here. Do you need an experienced editor to look over your short story, script, or novel? Do you need help building a platform or self-publishing your book? Are you on the cusp of realizing your dream, but you need someone to help you with those few extra steps? Are you a business in need of an established copy editor or copywriter? Dan O'Brien has more than a decade of experience in writing and publishing, and his rates are flexible. All that matters to Dan is the integrity of your artistic vision, and Dan can help you create the highest quality work possible. Please email Dan today at amalgamconsulting@gmail.com or visit his website, www.amalgamconsulting.com. That's AMALGAM consulting.com. Write Dan today. Start your dreams tomorrow. Do you have hopes, dreams, and goals, but don't know how to reach them? Do you wonder how you could do differently to achieve greater success at home or at work? Do you feel like something is holding you back from enjoying your life to the fullest? Are you fed up with status quo and ready for real and lasting life change? Are you wanting to start a business or expand an existing one? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you are ready for life coaching with Mr. Attitude. Mr. Attitude will stretch and grow you and take your life to a whole new level of success by equipping you with the tools to help you to accomplish more in less time, get and keep your priorities in line, gain greater happiness and joy, face your fears, plan for success, be more assertive and confident, overcome negative stress, deal with negative thinking, set goals you will achieve, and more. Mr. Attitude specializes in results producing. Life strategy coaching for the personal side of your life. Small business coaching for those who want to start a small business or build a stronger small business. Train the trainer coaching for those who aspire to become a motivational professional speaker. Call today and reserve your appointment with greater success. 605-450-1955. That's 605-450-1955. Or email Bob at MrAttitudespeaks.com. That's MrAttitudespeaks.com. Mr. Attitude is committed to your success. We are back on the House of Hidalgo show. This is Rick Hidalgo. I've not been able to get our guest back on quite yet. Not sure what's going on with Skype. It's giving me quite a bit of trouble. We're going to try again to dial him in, see if I can get him back here. But otherwise,
hello.
Yeah, are you back?
Oh my God, Rick! I can safely say that's never happened before. I just had lightning strike. I must have been above the house. I think one of the transformers gone to the estate. I'm lucky my computer's still running.
Wow.
Yeah, we're getting thunderstorms here. I didn't know if you could hear the thunder outside the window because it's slightly open because of the heat, but there's just been lightning striking above the house. I think one of the transformers has gone to the estate. I'm running on the battery on the laptop now, so... Man, that was intense. I just could feel the boom in my chest when it struck there.
Wow. Well, we're still live, James. If you want to try to finish up, yeah.
Yeah, let's try that. I mean, I was talking about. I should just say we're having I'm at the same latitude here as Canada, like in Labrador, but like we're having a heat wave like in the 30 degrees Celsius, almost like 90s Fahrenheit, like, you know.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's like pretty intense the weather here at the moment, like so. Anyway, I was talking about Christendom and how they incorporated these pagan...
Yes, that's what you were, yeah.
But, like, I mean, they talk about St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland, and that was actually to do with the snake-worshipping cults. They wasn't actual physical snakes, Rick, which Christendom would have you believe. It was basically if you look at the Celts inherited these monuments, by the way. So you have the megalithic civilization, 3000 BC, peaking at 3000 BC till about 1000 BC, and the Celts appearing at about 1500 BC. So there's a little overlap there. But these guys, the Celts inherited these ancient monuments, and they talk about these people as the Tuatha De Danann, the other race of people, is basically what it translates in Gaelic. And these guys kind of tell us some stories to their tales and mythology about who these people were. So we have this little window into the past, Rick, and they talk about... One second. Half another computer's after booting up there. 1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, there's a big difference between that canon law and the canon code, and there's a lot of words, so they play a lot of semantic games in there.
Oh, sorry, Rick. So,
yeah.
These Celts, what a mess this show, eh?
That's right. I'll
back online and everything, but yeah. These Celts guys, they have pictures of them holding serpents in their hands, and it's like the ayahuasca stuff. I think these guys had hallucinogenic brews, and they were taking DMT, and a lot of their art is exactly what you see on ayahuasca visions, and these guys were like shamans, at these ancient temples, these ancient monuments, and that. When they were driving the snakes out of Ireland, they were driving the snake-worshipping cults out, and their serpentine art and everything to do with it. It wasn't physical snakes like you would believe, and so you kind of have this pagan belief system incorporated into religious belief systems. And I mean, if you take the Catholic Church, they have Babylonian iconography there too, and the bishop's hat is modelled on a Babylonian fish costume. If you look at the top of the hat of a bishop, it looks like an open mouth of a fish, and that was to do with Babylonian costumes, that they actually were full fish costumes. So again, it wasn't just the pagans that they incorporated, and they incorporated anything in to get this Christian belief system on the way. All of that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of semantics going on. Even in the canon law and the canon code, they throw all kinds of word pictures at you that you think mean one thing and actually mean something else. Like the word salvation. Salvation doesn't have anything to do with a belief in any one particular person. Salvation in their code actually means salvage, like salvaging your ship.
Sure.
So they play these semantic games. So it doesn't surprise me that it didn't have anything to do with physical snakes, because they've been playing these word games for years.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And it's like a disinformation campaign, if you want to call it that, like from going back ancient times. Like, it's always been a disinformation campaign. Don't enlighten people. Don't tell them what they're all about. Don't tell them that they're smart. Tell them that they're dumb. Tell them there's nothing to see here. I don't want people awake and aware, Rick.
Yeah.
If you're going to rule the world, how do you want everybody being clever, everybody being awake?
Yeah, you want, that's right, and you want to keep them afraid too. Put a big picture of Jesus on the cross.
Exactly, Rick. Use fear as a control mechanism.
Yeah.
If you're gonna rule, you're gonna rule by fear. It's the number one weapon. It's your number one choice of weapon, like.
Right.
Rule by fear, like, and. So yeah, it's something I've just got into in my other area of research, was to look at the acoustics, and the acoustics led me into this hallucinogenic element, or this shamanic religion that was kind of incorporated into these monuments too. And again, these guys were going into. I should concentrate on the tomb function. I mean, these monuments, as sophisticated as they are, Newgrange is the most complex megalithic site in the world. Let's say that first and foremost. It's got 45% of the rock art there, but there was bodies found inside. Not a lot of bodies, and every passage tomb that we talk about, there's never a large quantity of. When I say bodies, they're little bits of bones and cremated remains. The remains were cremated on the outside. But to cremate a body, you're looking at extremely large funeral pyre. Half a forest chopped down just to get the body to burn. And so, but they took the cremated remains in ceremonial bowls and left them on the inside. So, that's what they seem to concentrate on. I actually was at a place in Tyrone here in the north of Ireland, and it actually says on the billboard at the ancient site, and it's a couple of stone circles and pretty much level to ground level, and a little passage tomb there, like a little chambered cairn. And it says on the actual billboard, if you want to understand this site, it's best just to look only at the archaeological remains. And I'm like going, and then it says there was probably some astronomical function to it. I'm like going, it's the most bizarre thing ever. Like, they're primarily laid out in ground plans that are astronomically aligned. Spring equinox, autumn equinox, summer solstice, sunset, summer solstice, sunrise. You know, it's like there's like, if you, some of the stone circles have like 19 stones at them or 13 stones. They're all to do with lunar numbers. Like, you know, it's like astronomy was a key concept to these guys. You know, and it wasn't just to plant crops, Rick. You know, it was like, I don't think you need to know too much advancements of when the seasons are. I think you can pretty much guess when you want to plant a crop, like, without any sophisticated calendar. But it's even like there's evidence that they were building several calendars. And I go into that in the book. I mean, I try to talk about each site, and each site is revealing in itself. I mean, one of them, Newgrange, talks about like precession of the equinox, and it's probably one of the most sophisticated passage graves in Ireland, and that they actually crudely calculate the rate of precession of the sky, because the sky precesses at 1 degree every 72 years. So Newgrange, I think, was just built for that function alone. Incorporated some other art and technology into it, yes. Noth seems to really accurately map the synodic and the sidereal lunar months. It's a special temple. I call it the Noth Lunar Temple. You know, it's like each passage grave took out some area of research. Of course, they all have an alignment to a solstice or a special day, but like that was just to make sure that these guys looked to observe their cosmology on the special day, the same day every year, because you need to do that. You need to look on the same day 1 year apart if you're going to see any deeper cycles reveal themselves.
Sure. Because
you think about it, you have like different summer constellations and winter constellations, and in this part of the northern hemisphere, you have the Orion constellation in the January months and December months, like best time to see it, you know, and so you have constellations that are seasonal. So if you're going to look at anything and you know that the sky changes in seasonal constellations, you need to do it on the one same day every year. Not only that, Rick, and this is the real punchline here. I mean, they actually did it at the exact same time every year, and the Egyptians did this. The ancient cosmologists of Ireland did this. And they call it the Heliacal Rising of a star or constellation. And a Heliacal Rising is basically, in layman's terms, is when Helios being the sun, Heliacal Rising is when the sun rises and drowns out a star or constellation. So this star would rise on the horizon, and it would start rising and all and do its normal thing. But when it rose on the horizon and then the sun just happened to come up just behind it and quickly drown out, that was called the Heliacal Rising of a star or constellation. So a Heliacal Rising was a very revered thing, especially if the Heliacal Rising was on a summer solstice. That was like the granddaddy of all. And the Egyptian temples, some of them had Heliacal Risings of Sirius, and like, you know, it would be the most revered day. And some of the temples, when the Heliacal Rising didn't happen anymore because precession of the equinox knocked it out of alignment, 200 years later, like, you know, it was off 3 degrees. Like, they would just rip the temple down and start again and realign it. Like, you know, I know. I mean, major Temple of Dendera is one, to be precise. Like, it's built on the foundations of earlier temples with a different base of an alignment. So, you know, it was always the same stars and constellations. They were always concerned about the Sirius, concerned about Pleiades and Orion's belt as well. You know, it's always the same constellations coming up time and time again. So yeah, I mean, this is something that the Newgrange Sirius mystery, it starts with Newgranges and finishes with Newgranges, but I talk about a lot of passage graves in between, and I try to develop what I call a passage grave cosmology, to talk about the collective function of all these from a systems analyst approach, and show at least, the very least, all the different parts of what they were trying to do. And it makes sense, like, that they wouldn't go and repeat. It looks like these monuments are repeated in architecture, but they're not repeated in research. It's like each one had its own little area of research going on. You're not going to go and duplicate the research. That's what we actually do in this day and age. All these universities around the world, they're just duplicating the research that's already done to teach the other students. Like, whereas at least at these guys, they had a new area. They're like Stone Age universities, if you want to call it that, Rick. You know, these guys are going around doing Well, what do we not know and what do we need to look at? Okay, well, we know the solstice, we know the moon, we know the sun, okay. We got any other calendars we want to work on? Yeah. We've got a lunar calendar, we've got a solar calendar. Solar calendar was 16 months. The lunar calendar was 12 months long. That's what our calendar is based on today. It's based on an average lunar month of 29.5 days, which is why it goes between 28, 30, 31 days in the month. But these guys were doing a similar thing. They broke this solar year down, into 4 days of the year: spring and autumn solstices, and the shortest and longest day of the year, the summer and winter solstice. Then they split that into 2 again, and had these cross-quarter days, the halfway points in between. And it looks like they further broke that down again into 16 days of the year, which was their 16 months, which were 20, 21, and 22 days of the year. Just like what we do, but you just did it in 16 months instead of 12. Now, we know this because there's 2 calendar stones, and it looks like an evolution in design too. We've got 16 rays coming out of like a circular disc on the sky. It looks to be, and other calculations on it. So, and then this calendar stone seems to be reproduced somewhere else, but more evolved and more sophisticated. It looks like there was an evolution in calendar building as well. And like I say, there's always a little bit of area of research going on, but you need to get in deep to this stuff, Rick, and you need to kind of show this, and that's what I tried to do with all the maps and all the screenshots and what I was doing. And
I have a question for you, James.
Sure.
It's based on modern history. We like to call the father of free energy. We like to label Tesla with that title of the father of free energy, because we know that we have documented fact of the of this wireless tower that he built and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But what if these monoliths were actually conducting energy? What if they actually had the first free energy?
Sure. I was actually, as I said, I had a Colorado girl here, and I was showing around in these ancient monuments, and I was showing her these things called round towers, and the round towers are more recent times, like after 0 BC, and they believe anyway, but they're just like these ancient giant standing stones, or these monoliths or obelisks in ancient Egypt. And it's been known that the area around these round towers, they have they're very long, tall, conical with a point on them, just like an obelisk basically. And that these things may have electrified the air and ionization, and the ground around these things were more fertile around these round towers. They were similar thing to Tesla's tower, and do we have an ancient technology? Whether they understood it, maybe they built these towers. I always try to look like an innocent, intuitive way they may have found these things out. They may have discovered. There would have been a natural discovery process, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter whether they're standing stones or obelisks. There was some sort of energy stuff with these as well. I mean, it's a whole area of research I've looked into but not wrote about. And but yeah, I mean, the obelisks, and they talk about these things electrifying the air. And there's a guy used to bring seeds to the ancient pyramids and stuff, and they have a higher yield, Rick. When you take these seeds to the ancient monuments and these pyramids, that they get electrified with the ionization, and that when you go and plant them, then they have time and time again, they have a 30% higher yield than everything else that's planted without the effect. You can measure the electrostatic energy of these things. So is there a lost technology with these? Is it like a Tesla type energy? It's one area I have to say I've researched Tesla to no end, as electrical and a mechanical engineer. That's what he did. He taught in terms of frequency. I come from a communications background as a hobbyist. I used to build amateur radio and stuff. And yeah, I mean, Tesla was a joy to research, and he's he's a researcher's dream, in terms of intrigue and mystery and technology and intellect. He has it all, this guy. But yeah, and it's a shame that the stuff that Tesla talked about is being covered up, taken away from us,
Yeah. This commerce world that we live in, you can't make money off of it. They got to cover it up.
Yeah, and will that come to the forefront again? I think the ancients had it. I think they had a spiritual technology too, Rick. If you want to get philosophical on it, I looked up the work of John Anthony West, and he talks about the work of Schwaller de Lewis, and I've had a lot of ancient Egypt guys on my own show, Capricorn Radio, and it's stuff that why I wanted Capricorn Radio to go off the ground was like, these guys I'm talking similar stuff that I mightn't get to write about, but I might want to research, and it's like to bring the research to me instead of having to go look for it too, and to get talking to these guys, and I've learned so much doing it, Rick, and like from what I realised that these guys were super scientists. They just did it a different way, and we're looking with different eyes. And I think when you take away the cultural lensing and you look at what they did, and it looks like the ancient Egyptians were synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain, Rick, that these guys had a spiritual technology. They talk about when you look at the Book of the Dead, it's like they go to all these spiritual gates of hell, that purgatory might actually be a place. I mean, the stuff that's in the Bible, Rick, I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh is an ancient Sumerian tale. It's like the same as Noah's flood, point by point analysis, like, So, the stuff that's in the Bible isn't necessarily corrupted or wrong. It's maybe just twisted from other ancient cultures. And was there a great flood? Most likely. Was there ancient technology? Most likely. Was there a spiritual technology? What is there? I don't negate spirituality just because of Christendom. Like, I mean, I think a lot of stuff's in there is true. And I have actually gained a spiritual concept more evolved and more elaborate from looking at ancient cultures, Rick, believe it or not. Like, ancient technology and ancient cultures, and this area of research for me has put me on the spiritual map again, like, where I would have been heading down an atheist route, like, for my career, which is, I find it bizarre like that. I was heading for this, like, this atheist route, like, from academia, nothing to see here, this scientific academic dogma that I was heading down, like, but from looking at ancient cultures, like, these guys had something, like, these guys were like, let's wake up, like, I mean, I always say to people, Rick, they all talk about the Great Pyramid, and any engineer, and I've been there to Egypt 3 times, and any engineer that goes to the Great Pyramid looks at it, their jaw drops, and they go, hang on a minute, that's extremely difficult to do. I don't think we could even do that today. To deliberate whether we could do it today with the technology that they had, or with the technology that we accept they had at the time, we have no idea. We couldn't do it. Like, if we did it with our own modern tools, I think we could just barely replicate it, given enough time and unlimited money. I think with our modern tools we could. But I say, forget the Great Pyramid for a minute, look right beside it, look at the Sphinx Valley Temple, and you tell me how they got a 200-ton lintel stone into a tight corner, because we could only get it up and down off the ground, because we need to surround it by so many cranes to get this big massive lintel up and down off the ground. But these guys have it in the tight corner. We couldn't get the cranes into the tight corner, Rick, is my point. We can't. There is something there that we can't replicate. But guys, these guys were shifting 500-ton granite blocks. I mean, the megalithic civilization too has parallels sometimes. I mean, these guys were building Stonehenge, shipping stones from the Pressley Hills in Wales, like, many hundreds of miles, shaping them and artificially shaping them to enhance the sound and aligning them to constellation. These guys are off their head, like, in terms of intellect, not the dummies we made them out to be, Rick. Far from being dummies, like.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that we're taught, is that we're so much smarter than the people that came before us.
Sure.
But that's a bunch of BS.
Yeah. Exactly. A bunch of BS, like. And here's the thing, Rick, for me, when I started researching these monuments, I said, right, take the passage graves as an area of research first, because they got alignments, first and foremost. They have an alignment from the passageway to the inside chamber. They're telling us they did something here. It's like the first port of call. Start with what you can find out, and then see where you go with it. Then they got all the rock art in Ireland. That's why I didn't go too mad outside Ireland, but I've been as far as Portugal.
Yeah, go ahead.
As far as Portugal and Denmark and other places. But Denmark's got lacking in rock art. So there's a reason I concentrated on Ireland, and there's a reason I concentrated on passage tombs, because it's the first avenue of research. We can find out a lot, I'm spilling outside that now, but, like, I mean, I started with astronomy first, and I went, right, these guys are pretty clever. And I've had to raise my awareness and go, right, these guys are a bit more than that, now that they have the acoustics element and then the spiritual element too. These guys were super scientists as far as I'm concerned, and I've raised my own. I mean, I already had them on a pedestal, Rick, for the astronomy, but now I'm, like, raising it again, like.
Sure. We've got a little bit of overtime we can do here, so ignore that British lady in the background.
She's got a nice authoritative tone, though. I'd listen to a lady more than I would to a guy giving me authority, like.
Yeah. We got a little bit over time we can go, so you
Sure.
can continue to talk a little bit on
yeah, I mean, I should say, like, you know, I'm hoping to roll out this acoustics book now, the Megalithic Acoustics Mystery, and, I mean, again, for that, at least I wasn't confined to Ireland this time, because the acoustics, you can go anywhere to measure the acoustics of anything, and the acoustics seems to be widespread across the megalithic civilization too, and many ancient cultures. I should say, nearly every ancient culture, like the Mayans, the Aztecs, the ancient Egyptians, they all incorporate astronomy and alignments into their buildings. Like, it's bizarre, but everywhere you see these astronomy cultures, these observational cosmologists embedded in their cultures, you see like ancient acoustics too. I mean, the Aztecs, the Mayans did it, the Egyptians did it, the Peruvians did it. All these megalithic architectures, acoustics, and astronomy. It's like we have these astroacoustics culture. You know, it's bizarre, Rick, that these guys have these two lines of evidence, like, you know, side by side with heavy megalithic architecture. Sorry, go.
Well, I just wonder how much of that, James, could also be for homeopathic purposes.
Yes, exactly. Homeopathic, you know, I think that's a very much thing. I think there was holistic healing going on. And
yeah.
And the girl that read my book there that she was visiting, she said to me, you seem to have this holistic approach to trying to understand these things. And I went, I think that's where I'm going with this. I mean, I didn't even get into the quartz element, Rick. I mean, it's where I'm going in the second book, that this acoustics was probably a holistic message that they were leaving us, that there is like synchronizing hemispheres of the brain. Were they doing that for a spiritual enhancement to go into alternate states, or was it like healing and homeopathic healing? Some people thinking they were going to tune into, you know, their ancient cousins that are dead or whatever, you know. So it's open to scrutiny, that, like, you know, granted, but I mean, I do think there was a homeopathic result to that, you know. I think, you know, when you look at the origins of the harp and that it has the power to heal, like, you know, the acoustics can heal. They can heal depression, they can heal. There's a lady in Wales did research on this, Rick. You know, and the harp is an ancient acoustic artifact, like. It's still living today. It's one of the most difficult instruments to play, like, you know. But when you play it, the resonance that comes off it has the power to heal. And the resonance in some of these ancient chambers, like in Ireland, these what we call passage tombs, you know, look outside the burial function and look into the acoustics, and you'll find like these things are rich in resonance. And, you know, some people think that, you know, when you go inside and you seal the chamber off, and there's evidence that these chambers were sealed with stones. Newgrange has a stone that was sealed the chamber, and there's other ones in Lough Crew, passage tombs. And when you seal these acoustic chambers and you're inside, you're effectively inside a sound chamber. You're inside an experiment. You're inside the experiment, like. And, you know, if you beat a drum between 5 and 7 times a second, which is 5 to 7 hertz, these are theta frequencies, Rick. These are what affect you. It's like infrasound rumbling in your stomach. Like, it's like thunder hits you. Like, you can, when thunder strikes, it's like infrasound. You can hear the rumble, like, you know.
Right.
It's the same as these sound chambers, like, you know. If given enough time and prolonged enough, you will drop to the ground and go into an altered state, like, you know, if sustained enough, because it's affecting your theta frequencies, your brain, that your brain waves work at. So, does that have an effect on you? Does that give you a reboot like ayahuasca does? Does it, like, you know, enhance DMT production? You know, I think there was all sorts going on. Maybe these guys discovered this from, you know, different ways. Maybe they didn't. Maybe there's a natural discovery process, but once they realized the effects of it, maybe they tried to refine it. I think that's why you maybe find acoustics design and different types of layout of the chambers, but it seems to be like each recess of the main chamber, they built a little floor sill and a head sill. Like each recess was like an aperture to get into the room, like a bass box. It's like there was a bass box off each central chamber. And the hypogeum, something I get into in my Megalithic Acoustics book, was like, you know, we're one of the most sophisticated ancient acoustics monuments on the planet, dating to 4000 BC. Did they go and visit the dead, or did they go and cremate the remains outside and go and see the dead off in an altered state, you know? Some people think they were going to visit their ancient cousins. Some people saying they were sending them off. But like, sure enough, there was a spiritual function and a holistic function too. And synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain, by the way, is something that people do in yoga when the breathing exercises. It's a known ancient technique to synchronize the hemispheres of the brain. And something again the ancient Egyptians did.
Right.
Bizarre, totally bizarre, but the evidence is there to follow, Rick. That's the point that I tried to make out. And I guess the first book, The New Grand Serious Mystery, I only wanted to talk about the astronomy. I wanted at least raise the level of awareness to where I was at, what I discovered, look at the whole thing as a whole, take on a systems analyst approach like I did, understand where I went with the book, and then look at it as a whole and see where you go with it. See, do you raise your awareness of it to me, the same as me? I try to do it in a journalistic manner, in an academic manner, and at least get that one done and then address the acoustics separately. Otherwise, it would be convoluted and just going off in tangents. So I think that was the aim of what I tried to achieve, Rick.
Well, James, we're going to wrap this up here, but I'm wondering, where can people buy your book?
Sure, just you head on to jamesswagger.com, that's 2 G's, and you'll see the link for the book there. If you want a signed copy, I have a reduced rate for my American friends, so to help with the postage, because I have to compete against Amazon, but you can easily get it on Amazon as well. But if you want a signed copy, go to my site, jamesswagger.com, or Amazon US, Amazon UK. I have my own website for the book. It's Newgrange Cosmology. It's all linked on jamesswagger.com, and you can read a bit of background to the book and what it's about. You can see some ancient sites via Google Earth and that, and check some of the stuff out. You can get the Kindle version, signed copy, or PDF. It's all there on the one site. And I'm working on the new website for the new book coming out, The Megalithic Acoustics Mystery. Hopefully that's out in the fall. So yeah, it's all under the one site, jamesswagger.com. You can read about me and my background too, and see about my own shows there as well on capricornradio.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to link that on my website as well, so people can get to you and find you. So James,
yeah, it's Rick. I just should say something I look into a lot myself is like, I mean, I've had a car crash before, and I've been medically healed. I broke most of my bones in my body and my pelvis, and I was telling somebody this the other day, I can't even remember what it was called, but it knitted the bones together. This alternative medicine that I had, this plant product, it was like a fibrous plant product that I had, and it helped knit my bones together. They were going to give me a new hip. I smashed my pelvis in that many places, and I'm super fit now. I don't have arthritis. They told me I'd have arthritis when I was 30, but I look into all sorts of stuff in yoga and holistic health, and I think it's a great area of research. I see it working for me, in many areas. But who's to know that these guys have a holistic approach to health and their mind and the pineal gland, and something I should really get into a bit more. I do think the acoustics element was there to talk about different frequencies and how they change their brainwaves and their patterns, and maybe it calmed them down, Rick. Maybe it kept these guys out of war muggery till zero. Maybe it kept them at a peaceful level. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's very possible because they're talking about the difference between this matriarchal
and the patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
That's exactly it, Rick. And the matriarchal culture, just to wrap on this, was a great time when the man and the woman ruled side by side. If you look at ancient Egypt, the woman and the man sat side by side, and she had her arm around her, and the males wore wigs to look like women, to say, we're ruling side by side. They shaved their heads and wore the wigs, Right. That all got corrupted around 1500 BC when the patriarchal, male-dominated right-brain culture took over, So, yeah, that's what they talk about. Maybe we'll go back to matriarchal times. Matriarchy is not the opposite of patriarchy. Women-dominated society. It's males and females together,
Right. Right. Yeah, and I'm going to have you back on Tuesday, and we'll go some of those directions. So
yeah, that'd be great, Rick. That'd be great.
So thanks, James, for coming on. Thank you again, sir.
Sure, no problem, Rick. Sorry we had some storms in the middle of it, but
that's okay. I can edit those out. No problem, man.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for your time, mate.
So for James Swagger, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been another episode of the House of Hidalgo Show. Thank you for coming. God bless you all, and stay safe.